The maintenance hangar at Nellis Air Force Base fell silent, except for the rhythmic clanking of a wrench against metal. In the dim fluorescent light, a figure hunched over the exposed engine of an F-16 Fighting Falcon, her flight suit stained with hydraulic fluid and determination. Captain Raven Ghost Nakamura had been grounded for 3 weeks, ever since the incident over the Nevada test range that nobody wanted to discuss in official channels. The engine before her was a General Electric F-110 GE-129, 30,000 pounds of thrust when functioning properly. Right now, it was 30,000 pounds of twisted metal and bureaucratic spite. The compressor blades showed signs of foreign object damage, but Ghost knew better. She'd seen this pattern before, in the mountains of Afghanistan, when politics and physics collided at 30,000 feet. Base Chief Colonel Miranda Blackwood emerged from the shadows, her polished boots clicking against the concrete floor. The woman who'd once been dubbed the Iron Maiden of Edwards carried herself with the calculated precision of someone who'd clawed her way to the top of a male-dominated hierarchy. Her silver eagles caught the hangar lights as she approached, clipboard in hand, a slight smirk playing across her lips. "Well, well," Blackwood's voice echoed through the cavernous space, "if it isn't our resident troublemaker playing mechanic." She paused, studying the scattered engine components with theatrical interest. "You know, Nakamura, I've been thinking about your situation. 3 weeks of hangar duty, 3 weeks of you insisting this engine failure wasn't pilot error." Ghost's hands never stopped moving, her fingers dancing across the engine's internals with surgical precision. She'd learned to work on jets from her grandfather, a mechanic who'd serviced P-51 Mustangs in World War II. "It wasn't pilot error, ma'am. The telemetry data proves—" "The telemetry data proves nothing," Blackwood interrupted, her voice sharp as winter wind. "But here's what I find fascinating. This particular F-110 has stumped our best engine specialists for 2 months. 2 months, Nakamura. Senior Master Sergeant Rodriguez, 23 years of experience, couldn't crack it. Chief Warrant Officer Patterson, MIT graduate, gave up last week." The hangar's massive doors groaned in the Nevada breeze, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow across the two women. Ghost finally looked up, her dark eyes meeting Blackwood's steady gaze. There was something dangerous in the colonel's expression, something that reminded Ghost of the moment before a missile lock. "So here's my proposition," Blackwood continued, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "If you can fix this engine, really fix it, not just patch it, I'll remove your flight restrictions. Full reinstatement, clean slate. But if you can't—" She let the words hang in the air like smoke from a burning aircraft. The challenge was a trap, and they both knew it. But Ghost had stopped caring about traps the day her wingman died. In the weeks following the Nevada incident, whispers had spread through Nellis like wildfire through dry brush. The official report stated mechanical failure, pilot error, loss of situational awareness. But the classified version told a different story, one that made senior officers uncomfortable and politicians nervous. Captain Raven Nakamura hadn't just experienced engine failure during a routine training exercise. She'd encountered something that defied conventional understanding of aerospace engineering. Ghost's hands moved with mechanical precision as she recalled that morning 3 weeks ago. The pre-flight inspection had been flawless, every system green, every protocol followed to the letter. Her F-16C Block 50, tail number 910376, had been a reliable bird with over 8,000 flight hours, and a maintenance record that read like a love letter to American engineering. The aircraft's call sign, Wraith, seemed prophetic now. The mission had been simple: high-altitude intercept training with Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Viper Chen, her squadron leader and the closest thing she had to a friend in the rigid hierarchy of military aviation. Chen flew with the precision of a Swiss chronometer and the tactical awareness of a chess grandmaster. When he'd called Ghost, "Check your 6," over the radio that morning, his voice had carried an edge she'd never heard before. "Wraith 2-1, I'm showing anomalous readings on your engine parameters. Chen had reported, his voice crackling through the radio static. EGT climbing, oil pressure fluctuating. Recommend RTB immediately. But Ghost's instruments had told a different story. Every gauge read normal, every system functioned within parameters. She'd run through her emergency procedures twice, finding nothing that matched Chen's observations. The F-110 engine hummed with its characteristic whine, pushing her through the crystalline air at 42,000 feet above the Mojave Desert. Then the impossible had happened. Not an explosion, not a catastrophic failure, but something far more subtle and infinitely more disturbing. The engine had simply stopped obeying the laws of physics. Thrust readings remained constant while airspeed bled away. Fuel flow indicators showed normal consumption while range calculations became meaningless. The aircraft had continued flying, but according to principles that existed nowhere in any technical manual. Chen's voice had grown increasingly urgent. Ghost, you're in an uncontrolled descent. Eject, eject, eject. But Ghost's altimeter showed steady flight at 41,000 feet. Her attitude indicator remained level. Every instinct told her the aircraft was flying normally, while her wingman reported watching her spiral toward the desert floor. The landing at Nellie's had been textbook perfect, or so Ghost remembered it. The aircraft had touched down with barely a whisper, the F-110 engine spooling down with mechanical contentment. But the maintenance crew had found something else entirely. An engine that looked as though it had been subjected to forces that shouldn't exist, metal stressed in patterns that made senior engineers exchange worried glances and reach for classified technical manuals. Now, surrounded by the scattered remains of that same engine, Ghost understood the trap Blackwood had set. This wasn't just about mechanical repairs or flight status. This was about credibility, about truth, about the delicate balance between what the military acknowledged publicly and what it investigated in the shadows of black projects and compartmentalized research. The F-110's compressor section lay before her like a metallic autopsy, each component tagged and cataloged by investigators who'd spent weeks trying to understand what they were seeing. Ghost picked up a turbine blade, feeling its weight, studying the microscopic stress patterns that decorated its surface like abstract art. The metal had been twisted, not by heat or impact, but by something that had reached into the very structure of the alloy and rearranged its molecular bonds. Colonel Blackwood watched from across the hangar, her expression unreadable. The woman had built her career on making impossible decisions and living with their consequences. She'd flown combat missions over Iraq during the early days of the war, back when the military was still pretending that women couldn't handle the psychological pressure of air-to-air combat. Her call sign, Iron Maiden, had been earned through a combination of tactical brilliance and absolutely ruthless determination to prove that competence had no gender. But this situation was different. The incident over Nevada had been witnessed by multiple radar operators, recorded by sophisticated telemetry systems, and analyzed by some of the most advanced scientific minds in the military-industrial complex. The data was consistent, reproducible, and completely impossible according to current understanding of aerodynamics and engine performance. Ghost had become the focal point of something much larger than a simple mechanical failure. She represented a question that made generals uncomfortable and defense contractors nervous. What happened when reality refused to conform to the parameters defined by human engineering? The engine before her wasn't just broken. It was evidence of a phenomenon that challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of flight itself. The hangar's massive doors groaned again, and Ghost looked up to see the desert sunset painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson. Somewhere out there, other pilots were flying routine missions, trusting their lives to engines identical to the ones scattered across her workbench. They relied on the same technical manuals, followed the same procedures, operated under the same assumption that the laws of physics remained constant and predictable. Ghost envied them their certainty. 3 weeks ago, she'd shared that confidence. Now, holding a turbine blade that had been stressed beyond any known engineering limits, she understood that her career, and quite possibly her life, depended on solving a puzzle that might not have a solution. The desert wind whispered through the hangar, carrying the scent of sage and the distant rumble of aircraft returning from evening sorties. Ghost set down the turbine blade and reached for her toolkit, her movements deliberate and precise. Blackwood's challenge was a trap, but it was also an opportunity. If she could understand what had happened to this engine, she might unlock secrets that would revolutionize aviation. If she failed, she would join the long list of military personnel whose careers had been sacrificed on the altar of classified disappointments. Either way, she would know the truth. And for a pilot who'd spent her entire career pushing the boundaries of human performance, truth was worth more than rank, more than reputation, more than the comfortable illusion of a predictable universe. The work began in silence, broken only by the methodical sounds of precision tools against engineered metal. Ghost's hands moved with the confidence of someone who understood that some problems could only be solved through absolute dedication to craft. She'd learned this lesson from her grandfather, who taught her that every machine had a story to tell, written in the language of stress patterns and metal fatigue. The F-110's story was unlike anything she'd encountered. The compressor blades showed evidence of exposure to forces that existed nowhere in contemporary physics textbooks. The metal had been compressed and expanded simultaneously, creating stress patterns that resembled the interference patterns of competing wave forms. It was as though the engine had been subjected to multiple gravitational fields operating at cross purposes, each pulling the metal in different directions while maintaining the overall structural integrity of the component. Ghost documented each anomaly with the thoroughness of a forensic investigator. Her grandfather had taught her that understanding came through patient observation, that every scratch and discoloration contained information about the forces that had created it. The F-110 had experienced something unprecedented, and the evidence was written in the molecular structure of its components. Colonel Blackwood maintained her vigil from across the hangar, occasionally consulting her tablet or responding to encrypted communications that arrived with the soft chime of classified message systems. The base continued its operations around them, the distant roar of departing aircraft, the mechanical whine of ground support equipment, the measured cadence of military personnel conducting the business of national defense. But inside the hangar, time seemed suspended. Ghost worked with the focused intensity of a surgeon, each movement calculated to preserve the integrity of the evidence while revealing the secrets hidden within the engine's twisted metal. She'd seen similar patterns before, during her deployment to Afghanistan, when experimental aircraft had pushed the boundaries of conventional aerodynamics. But those had been research programs, carefully controlled experiments designed to explore the limits of human engineering. This was different. The F-110 had encountered something that operated outside the parameters of human design, something that had reached into the heart of American military technology and demonstrated that the laws of physics were far more flexible than anyone had imagined. The implications were staggering, not just for military aviation, but for the fundamental understanding of reality itself. As the night deepened, Ghost's investigation revealed layer after layer of impossible evidence. The engine's fuel injectors showed signs of molecular reorganization, as though the chemical bonds of the metal had been temporarily dissolved and reformed according to different physical laws. The turbine housing displayed stress patterns that could only have been created by rotational forces operating in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Each discovery raised more questions than it answered. How could an engine continue to produce thrust while experiencing this level of structural anomaly? How could the aircraft maintain controlled flight while its primary propulsion system operated according to physics that didn't exist in any textbook? Most importantly, what external force could have caused these changes, and was it still operating in the airspace above Nevada? Ghost's methodical investigation was more than mechanical repair. It was an archaeological expedition into the remains of an encounter with the unknown. Every component told part of a story that challenged the very foundations of military aviation, a story that made senior officers nervous and politicians eager to classify everything under the deepest levels of national security. The breakthrough came at 3:17 in the morning, when Ghost discovered something that made her hands tremble despite years of combat experience. Hidden within the engine's combustion chamber, protected by layers of heat-resistant alloy, was a component that shouldn't exist, a crystalline structure that pulsed with barely perceptible energy, its faceted surface reflecting light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The crystal was roughly the size of a marble, its surface inscribed with geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. It pulsed with a rhythm that matched the human heartbeat, each pulse accompanied by a barely audible harmonic that resonated through the metal of the engine. Ghost understood immediately that this was the source of the anomalous readings, the explanation for the impossible flight characteristics that had ended her career. But understanding the cause only deepened the mystery. The crystal was clearly artificial, its geometric precision far beyond anything that could occur naturally. Yet it was also unlike any human technology, its construction based on principles that operated outside conventional physics. Someone or something had placed this device within her aircraft's engine, turning her F-16 into an unwitting test platform for technology that redefined the possible. Colonel Blackwood's footsteps echoed across the hangar floor as she approached, drawn by some instinct that told her the investigation had reached a critical moment. Her expression remained carefully neutral, but Ghost could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hand rested near the encrypted communication device that connected her to the highest levels of military command. "What have you found, Captain?" Blackwood's voice carried the weight of someone who understood that the answer might change everything. Ghost held up the crystal, its faceted surface catching the hangar lights and throwing them back in patterns that seemed to dance with their own intelligence. "The answer, ma'am, and the beginning of a much bigger question." The discovery of the crystal transformed the hangar from a maintenance facility into a crime scene, complete with scientific investigators and security personnel, who appeared with the swift efficiency of a military operation, long prepared for this possibility. Ghost found herself simultaneously vindicated and more deeply entangled in a web of classified research that stretched far beyond her individual situation. Dr. Sarah Martinez, a civilian contractor with the kind of security clearance that made colonels nervous, arrived within hours of Blackwood's encrypted communication. She wore the understated confidence of someone accustomed to working on projects that didn't officially exist, her movements precise and economical as she examined the crystal through specialized instruments that had been transported to Nellie's under armed escort. "The geometric patterns are consistent with theoretical models we've been developing," Martinez explained, her voice carrying the careful neutrality of someone accustomed to briefing senior military officials on impossible subjects. "The material composition is unprecedented. It appears to be a metallic crystal with properties that shouldn't be stable under normal conditions." Ghost watched the investigation unfold around her with the detached fascination of someone whose reality had been fundamentally altered. The crystal had been integrated into her aircraft's engine with surgical precision, its placement calculated to interact with the combustion process in ways that enhanced rather than disrupted engine performance. Someone with an intimate understanding of F-110 engineering had installed this device, turning her aircraft into an unwitting test platform for technology that existed nowhere in human databases. The implications were staggering. If this technology could be reverse-engineered and mass-produced, it would revolutionize not just military aviation but transportation itself. Aircraft equipped with similar devices could operate with unprecedented efficiency, their engines drawing energy from sources that conventional physics couldn't explain. The strategic advantages were obvious: extended range, improved performance, reduced fuel consumption, and most importantly, capabilities that potential adversaries couldn't match or counter. But the presence of the crystal also raised darker questions. How had it been installed without detection by Nellie's sophisticated security systems? Who possessed the technical knowledge to integrate advanced technology into American military aircraft? Most unsettling of all, how many other aircraft might be carrying similar devices, their crews unaware that they were flying experimental platforms for research that operated outside official channels? Colonel Blackwood coordinated the investigation with the practiced efficiency of someone who dealt with classified anomalies before. Her communications were brief and coded, each transmission contributing to a larger picture that existed at security levels far above Ghost's clearance. But Ghost could read the subtext in Blackwood's expressions, the way she consulted her tablet before making decisions that would reshape military aviation research. The crystal pulsed with its steady rhythm, each beat accompanied by harmonics that seemed to resonate through the hangar's metal structure. Dr. Martinez's instruments recorded energy patterns that defied conventional measurement, wavelengths that existed between the established electromagnetic spectrum and something that human science hadn't yet discovered. The device was actively communicating, its signals directed toward receivers that operated far beyond the detection capabilities of conventional monitoring systems. As dawn approached over the Nevada desert, Ghost found herself at the center of a classified research program that made her original incident seem like a minor procedural violation. The crystal represented a technological leap that could redefine the balance of global military power, but it also represented a security breach that reached into the heart of American air superiority. Someone had turned her aircraft into a testing platform without her knowledge or consent, using her as an unwitting subject in an experiment that could have resulted in her death. The truth was both liberating and terrifying. Ghost's flight characteristics over Nevada hadn't been the result of pilot error or mechanical failure. They'd been the consequence of technology that operated according to principles that human science was only beginning to understand. Her aircraft had been enhanced, its performance capabilities extended beyond conventional limits through the integration of devices that existed nowhere in official research programs. But liberation came with a price. The discovery of the crystal had elevated her situation from a simple disciplinary matter to a national security issue of the highest classification. Her future would be determined not by military justice, but by the requirements of programs that operated in the shadows of official oversight, guided by priorities that might not include her survival or career rehabilitation. The morning sun painted the Nevada landscape in shades of gold and crimson as specialized transport vehicles arrived to secure the crystal and transport it to facilities that didn't appear on any public maps. Ghost watched her discovery disappear into the black world of classified research, knowing that she would probably never see it again or learn the full extent of what it represented. Colonel Blackwood approached as the last of the investigation team departed, her expression carrying the weight of decisions that would reshape multiple careers and possibly alter the course of military aviation development. The woman had spent her career managing the intersection of politics and physics, balancing the requirements of national security against the realities of technological advancement. "Your flight restrictions are officially lifted, Captain," Blackwood announced, her voice carrying notes of both respect and concern. "But your new assignment will be unique. There are other incidents, other aircraft, other crystals. We need someone with your technical expertise and flight experience to investigate phenomena that officially don't exist." Ghost understood the offer's implications. She would be joining a program that operated outside conventional military structure, investigating incidents that challenged fundamental assumptions about reality itself. Her career would continue, but in a direction that would take her far from the predictable world of routine flight operations and standard procedures. The choice was both obvious and terrifying. She could accept reassignment to conventional duties, returning to the comfortable illusion that physics remained predictable and flight operations followed established parameters. Or she could step into the unknown, dedicating her career to understanding phenomena that might redefine human knowledge about the nature of reality itself. Ghost looked across the hangar one final time, seeing not just a maintenance facility, but the birthplace of questions that would reshape her understanding of flight, physics, and the hidden capabilities of technology that operated beyond official acknowledgement. The crystal was gone, but its implications remained, challenging everything she thought she knew about the intersection of human engineering and the fundamental forces that govern the universe. Her decision would determine not just her own future, but possibly the future of military aviation itself. In the growing light of dawn, surrounded by the familiar sounds and smells of military aircraft operations, Captain Raven Ghost Nakamura prepared to step into a world where the impossible became routine and reality proved far more flexible than anyone had imagined. The briefing room at Groom Lake was nothing like the sterile conference facilities at Nellie's. Located deep within the most classified facility in American military aviation, the room existed in a state of permanent twilight, its windows blocked and its walls lined with electromagnetic shielding that prevented any signals from entering or leaving. Ghost sat at a table that had witnessed briefings on projects that redefined the boundaries of human capability, surrounded by personnel whose very presence confirmed the existence of programs that operated beyond public knowledge. Major General Patricia Steele Morrison commanded the room with the quiet authority of someone who'd spent decades managing impossible situations. Her silver hair was pulled back in a regulation bun that couldn't disguise the intensity of eyes that had seen technology evolve from experimental concepts to operational reality. She'd overseen the development of stealth aircraft, directed the integration of advanced avionics systems, and now found herself responsible for phenomena that challenged the fundamental assumptions of aerospace engineering. "Welcome to Project Starfall, Captain Nakamura," Morrison began, her voice carrying the weight of classified authority. "What you discovered in your aircraft's engine was not an isolated incident. Over the past 18 months, we've documented similar anomalies in 47 different aircraft across multiple branches of service. The crystals appear to be self-installing, integrating with aircraft systems through processes that our best engineers can't explain or replicate." The briefing materials spread across the table painted a picture that was both fascinating and deeply disturbing. Military aircraft from every branch of service had been found carrying similar crystalline devices, each one perfectly integrated with the host aircraft systems, and apparently designed to enhance rather than sabotage performance. Fighter jets reported extended range and improved maneuverability. Transport aircraft demonstrated cargo capacities that exceeded their structural limits. Even helicopters had been found with devices that allowed them to operate at altitudes that should have been impossible for their rotor systems. Dr. Elizabeth Chen, a physicist whose security clearance rivaled that of cabinet members, presented data that challenged basic assumptions about materials science and energy physics. Her research team had spent months analyzing the crystals recovered from various aircraft, using instruments that existed nowhere in civilian laboratories and techniques that had been developed specifically for this investigation. "The crystalline structures demonstrate properties that don't conform to any known materials," Dr. Chen explained, her presentation accompanied by holographic displays that showed molecular structures rotating in three-dimensional space. "They appear to be composed of elements that exist in configurations that shouldn't be stable under normal conditions. More significantly, they seem to draw energy from sources that we can't identify or measure using conventional instruments." Ghost studied the technical data with the focused attention of someone whose life had been altered by these discoveries. Each crystal was unique in its geometric patterns, but identical in its fundamental properties, suggesting manufacturing techniques that operated according to principles that human technology couldn't replicate. The devices were clearly artificial, their construction demonstrating engineering capabilities that exceeded current human knowledge by decades or possibly centuries. The strategic implications were staggering. If these crystals could be reverse-engineered and mass-produced, they would provide American military forces with capabilities that no potential adversary could match. Aircraft equipped with similar devices could operate with unprecedented efficiency and performance, providing decisive advantages in any conflict scenario. But the presence of the crystals also represented a security nightmare. Someone or something was installing advanced technology in American military aircraft without authorization, detection, or explanation. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Viper Chen, Ghost's former wingman and the pilot who'd witnessed her anomalous flight characteristics, had been recruited into Project Starfall 2 weeks after her incident. His testimony provided crucial evidence about the external manifestations of crystal technology, confirming that the devices affected not just internal aircraft systems, but also external flight characteristics in ways that defied conventional aerodynamics. From my perspective, Ghost's aircraft was performing impossible maneuvers, Chen reported, his usual precision replaced by the careful uncertainty of someone describing events that challenged his understanding of flight physics. She maintained controlled flight while her engine parameters indicated complete system failure. Her aircraft responded to control inputs that should have been ineffective given her reported airspeed and altitude. It was as though she was flying according to different physical laws. The briefing continued for 3 hours, each presentation adding new layers to a mystery that seemed to expand rather than resolve with additional information. The crystals were distributed randomly across aircraft types and operational units, showing no pattern that would suggest systematic installation by human agents. They appeared spontaneously, integrating with aircraft systems during routine operations without triggering any security protocols or maintenance alerts. Most disturbing of all, the crystals seemed to be learning. Early devices had demonstrated basic performance enhancements, improving fuel efficiency and extending operational ranges. But more recent discoveries showed increasingly sophisticated capabilities. Adaptive flight control systems that compensated for combat damage, enhanced sensor packages that detected threats beyond conventional radar ranges, and communication systems that operated on frequencies that human technology couldn't access. Ghost absorbed the information with the analytical precision of someone trained to process complex tactical situations under extreme pressure. The crystals represented technology that exceeded human capabilities, but they were being deployed in patterns that suggested benevolent rather than hostile intentions. Rather than sabotaging American military aircraft, the devices were enhancing their capabilities and protecting their crews from situations that would normally result in mission failure or personnel loss. The conclusion was both reassuring and deeply unsettling. Someone or something was upgrading American military aviation technology through methods that operated outside human detection or control. The installations were precise, beneficial, and completely unauthorized by any human authority. American pilots were flying aircraft that had been enhanced by technology from sources that remained completely unknown. Major General Morrison concluded the briefing with an assignment that would reshape Ghost's career and possibly her understanding of reality itself. Project Starfall required pilots with exceptional technical knowledge and proven ability to operate under extreme conditions, personnel who could investigate crystal phenomena while maintaining the operational security that kept these discoveries classified at the highest levels. Your new assignment, Captain, will involve flying aircraft that have been deliberately equipped with recovered crystal technology, Morrison explained, her words carrying implications that extended far beyond conventional military duty. We need to understand how these devices operate, how they interact with human pilots, and most importantly, whether their presence represents an opportunity or a threat to American national security. Ghost accepted the assignment with the steady professionalism that had defined her military career, but internally she grappled with questions that extended far beyond tactical considerations. She would be flying aircraft enhanced by technology from unknown sources, serving as a test pilot for devices that operated according to principles that human science couldn't explain. Her missions would contribute to understanding phenomena that might redefine humanity's place in a universe that was proving far more complex and populated than anyone had imagined. The transition from conventional military aviation to Project Starfall operations required 3 weeks of intensive training at facilities that didn't appear on any official maps. Ghost learned to operate aircraft systems that incorporated recovered crystal technology, familiarizing herself with flight characteristics that defied everything she'd learned about aerodynamics and aircraft performance. The enhanced aircraft responded to pilot inputs with unprecedented precision, their systems anticipating crew requirements and adapting to mission parameters in ways that seemed almost intuitive. The training aircraft, a modified F-16 designated Phantom, carried crystal technology that had been carefully integrated with its conventional systems by teams of engineers who worked under security classifications that exceeded top secret. The aircraft's performance envelope had been expanded beyond anything achievable through conventional engineering, its operational capabilities enhanced to levels that made standard fighter aircraft seem primitive by comparison. Ghost's first flight in Phantom was both exhilarating and terrifying. The aircraft responded to her inputs with a sensitivity that bordered on telepathic, its flight control systems adapting to her flying style and preferences in real time. The F-110 engine, enhanced by crystal technology, produced thrust levels that exceeded its design specifications while consuming fuel at rates that defied thermodynamic principles. Most remarkably, the aircraft seemed to anticipate her intentions, responding to control inputs before she'd fully committed to specific maneuvers. The crystal technology integrated seamlessly with conventional avionics, enhancing rather than replacing existing systems. Navigation equipment achieved accuracy levels that exceeded GPS capabilities. Radar systems detected targets at ranges that shouldn't have been possible given their power output and antenna configurations. Communication systems accessed frequencies that existed outside the conventional electromagnetic spectrum, enabling contact with ground stations and other aircraft across distances that challenged radio wave propagation theory. But the most significant enhancement was the aircraft's apparent ability to operate according to modified physical laws. Phantom could sustain flight at airspeeds and altitudes that should have resulted in aerodynamic stall or structural failure. The aircraft's control surfaces remained effective in flight regimes where conventional aerodynamics predicted complete loss of maneuverability. Most remarkably, the aircraft seemed capable of generating lift through mechanisms that operated independently of conventional wing design and airflow patterns. Ghost's training flights provided crucial data about human crystal technology interaction, confirming that the devices were designed to work in partnership with human operators rather than replace them. The crystals enhanced human capabilities rather than overriding them, creating symbiotic relationships between pilot and aircraft that achieved performance levels impossible through either human skill or conventional technology alone. The implications were staggering for military aviation doctrine and pilot training programs. If crystal technology could be reliably integrated with conventional aircraft, it would create capabilities that would revolutionize air warfare, transportation, and exploration. Aircraft equipped with crystal enhancements could operate in environments and mission profiles that were currently impossible, extending human reach into operational domains that had previously been inaccessible. But the training also revealed the personal costs of operating enhanced aircraft. Pilots reported increased sensitivity to electromagnetic fields, enhanced spatial awareness that persisted after landing, and dreams that seemed to contain information about flight techniques that they'd never learned through conventional training. The crystal technology was changing its human operators, creating neurological and physiological adaptations that might be permanent and were certainly unprecedented. Ghost experienced these changes herself during her third week of training. Her reaction times improved beyond normal human parameters. Her spatial perception extended to include awareness of aircraft and objects well beyond normal visual range. Most unsettling, she began experiencing moments of intuitive knowledge about aircraft systems and flight techniques that she'd never studied or practiced, as though the crystal technology was downloading information directly into her consciousness. The transformations were subtle but unmistakable, suggesting that crystal technology operated by creating partnerships between artificial enhancement and human consciousness. The devices weren't just improving aircraft performance. They were evolving human capabilities to match the enhanced operational requirements of modified aircraft systems. Pilots were becoming something new, something that existed at the intersection of human intuition and technological capability, that operated according to principles that conventional science couldn't explain. By the end of her training period, Ghost had become more than a conventional military pilot. She'd evolved into something that didn't fit existing classifications: part human operator, part technological interface, part explorer of flight regimes that existed beyond the boundaries of established aerodynamics. Her relationship with Phantom had become symbiotic, a partnership that achieved capabilities that neither human pilot nor enhanced aircraft could accomplish independently. The final training flight took place over restricted airspace above the Nevada test range, the same location where her original incident had occurred 3 months earlier. Flying Phantom at altitudes that conventional aircraft couldn't sustain, Ghost realized that her career had become something unprecedented. She was exploring the boundaries of flight itself, investigating capabilities that might redefine humanity's relationship with the atmosphere and possibly with the universe beyond Earth's protective envelope. Major General Morrison's final briefing confirmed that Ghost's training had prepared her for missions that would extend far beyond conventional military operations. Project Starfall wasn't just investigating crystal technology. It was preparing for contact with the intelligence responsible for installing enhancement devices in American military aircraft. The crystals were communication devices as much as performance enhancers, and their increasing sophistication suggested that their creators were preparing for more direct interaction with human civilization. Ghost's new assignment would place her at the center of humanity's first systematic attempt to communicate with intelligence that possessed technology centuries or millennia ahead of current human capabilities. Her flights would serve as diplomatic missions as much as test operations, representing humanity's attempt to establish contact with entities whose motivations and capabilities remained completely unknown. The weight of this responsibility settled over Ghost like the pressure of high-altitude flight, demanding capabilities that extended far beyond conventional pilot training. She would be representing not just American military interests, but humanity itself, in interactions that might determine the future course of human technological development and possibly human survival. Standing on the flight line at Groom Lake, watching the sun set over Nevada's ancient landscape, Ghost prepared for missions that would take her beyond the boundaries of human experience. The Crystals had chosen American military aircraft for their enhancement experiments, and now American pilots would carry the responsibility of determining whether this contact represented humanity's greatest opportunity or its most serious threat. The first operational mission launched at dawn on a Tuesday that would reshape human understanding of consciousness, technology, and the nature of intelligence itself. Ghost strapped into Phantom's cockpit with the methodical precision of someone whose training had prepared her for scenarios that existed nowhere in conventional flight manuals. Her mission parameters were simultaneously simple and impossible. Establish communication with the intelligence responsible for crystal technology installation, while maintaining operational security and crew survival. The enhanced F-16 responded to her pre-flight procedures with systems integration that seemed almost organic. Crystal technology had modified not just the aircraft's performance capabilities, but also its interface with human operators, creating control systems that responded to pilot intentions as much as physical inputs. Ghost found herself communicating with Phantom through methods that bypassed conventional switch positions and instrument readings, accessing aircraft status through awareness that seemed to flow directly from the crystal enhancement systems. Takeoff demonstrated capabilities that redefined the concept of aircraft performance. Phantom accelerated beyond normal F-110 thrust parameters, while consuming fuel at rates that violated conservation of energy principles. The aircraft climbed through altitudes that should have caused engine flameout while maintaining thrust levels that exceeded design specifications. Most remarkably, the aircraft's flight characteristics remained stable and predictable despite operating in flight regimes that existed beyond the boundaries of conventional aerodynamics. At 45,000 feet, Phantom entered airspace that conventional aircraft couldn't access, its crystal-enhanced systems maintaining cabin pressure and life support through mechanisms that operated independently of standard environmental control systems. Ghost found herself flying in an atmosphere so thin that conventional wings would provide insufficient lift. Yet Phantom maintained controlled flight through principles that seemed to ignore traditional relationships between airspeed, altitude, and aerodynamic forces. The communication attempt began with procedures that had been developed through analysis of crystal behavior patterns observed during laboratory testing. Ghost activated specific aircraft systems in sequences that seemed designed to resonate with crystal technology frequency patterns, sending signals that operated on wavelengths that existed between conventional radio communications and something that human technology was only beginning to detect. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Phantom's cockpit filled with displays that hadn't existed moments before, holographic interfaces that provided information about flight parameters that conventional instruments couldn't measure. Ghost found herself accessing data about atmospheric conditions, electromagnetic field variations, and navigation references that seemed to extend far beyond Earth's immediate environment. More significantly, she began receiving information that bypassed her conventional senses entirely. Knowledge about Phantom's enhanced capabilities flowed directly into her consciousness, technical understanding that she'd never studied but could access as easily as her own memories. The crystal technology was sharing operational procedures, performance parameters, and safety protocols through methods that operated at the intersection of technology and consciousness. But the most profound aspect of the communication involved emotional and conceptual content that transcended technical data. Ghost experienced awareness of vast intelligence networks that spanned distances and operated according to principles that made human civilization seem like a single cell in a cosmic organism of unimaginable complexity. The crystals weren't just enhancement devices. They were interfaces that connected human consciousness to awareness that existed on scales that challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of intelligence itself. The contact lasted 17 minutes by conventional time measurement, but Ghost experienced it as hours of information exchange that covered topics ranging from quantum mechanics to consciousness theory.